try an asterisk 3 that we might bring back into the joint meeting with management. What are the 3 most promising options here on the list? What would you say?
We've got to keep seniority on the table.
Okay, so seniority, you want to, obviously.
We couldn't get ratified without it.
Okay.
Also, job guarantees of some kind, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Job guarantees, that's a very promising idea. Okay.
But I think we need a voice in the training. I don't think there's any question that without a voice in the training, why we aren't comfortable.
Okay, a voice in the training. Okay. So
I don't think we want them to know, do we, that we've asterisked those, do we?
Well, let me ask you this, Al.
You see, bargaining, you're taking our flexibility away.
Oh, you're not making these as proposals.
Well,
these are just options you're willing to talk about. Is there any option here that you're not willing to talk about?
I think that the concern is that
Yeah.
if we offer up an idea, they're going to glom onto it
Right.
as if we proposed it.
Right.
You need to know that the first time they glam onto one of those and say, boy, we'll buy that, we're walking. Because
Al,
you've told us these are just things we're going to talk about.
Sure. Al, I'm going to be onto them long before you walk. Remember, the ground rule is no commitment.
All right.
I'll see to it that that ground rule is maintained.
Once the union team focused on the task of inventing options, they were able to come up with quite a few. It is a very important activity to brainstorm. The rules of brainstorming are quite clear. You set aside a time, no criticism, no commitment, just invent ideas. However short the time you have, it is a good idea to have some segment of time in which people are asked to explore, let their mind wander, and think of things that might meet the underlying interests.
So, let's continue. There are some interesting options put up here. How would you improve on these? How could they better be developed to meet your interests? Where do you see some overlap?
Frank, if you are serious in looking at our option on co-design, I have the feeling that we can work something out on your first item, management discussion with improved early retirement. I'm simply saying that without any commitment to it, but it seems to me there's something we could do there because we could provide an opportunity then for our older people to be involved.
And in some areas, we could have the older employees train the younger employees in those technologies where they're expert, and then in the newer technologies, why we'll look to some other source of training.
We may actually be able to do that training in-house, and then for those technologies which we're going to require more, we can send that to the community college, and we might be able to pay for that also.
Oh, I like that idea because a lot of people have told me they want training in areas where we don't presently offer any training.
Let's make sure we get these options down, because it sounds like you're really getting somewhere.
Now we've got a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
Why don't we start to flesh some of these out?
Inventing options enhances a negotiator's power. If I have a lot of options on the table, I'm better able to work out a solution that meets your interests and mine. I'm in a stronger position the more options I have. Often, options will simply solve the problem. You will have a good solution that meets the interests of both parties. Not all options are created equal. You have to evaluate them, and evaluation, as you saw, comes after the brainstorming session. We do not evaluate during the middle of brainstorming. In some cases, there are conflicting interests that cannot be solved by inventing options. There, we need other methods. In the next segment, we will look at the power of independent standards as a way of moving toward agreement.
Segment 3, Standards.
Sometimes interests conflict, and you can't find a creative option that satisfies both sides. Often when that happens, the parties end up in a contest of will, where one side or the other has to back down. That kind of contest is costly. It rewards stubbornness and deception. And nobody likes to back down. And so they don't. And the process takes forever. A better way to resolve conflicting interests in most situations is to use independent standards. For example, when I'm negotiating with a client, it's much more effective for me to explain that the fee I want is what I've been paid by a dozen other clients, than just to say, well, that's how much I want. It's hard to back down to the other side. It's much easier to go along with an independent standard, such as market value, precedent, or industry practice. Standards can be used as both a sword to persuade the other side and as a shield to protect yourself. As a sword, standards allow you to explain to the other side why your proposal would be fair for them, as well as for you. As a shield, standards allow you to explain why their proposal doesn't feel fair to you, wouldn't be appropriate according to some objective standards or precedents. Standards aren't created equal. You can look for the standards that are the most relevant, the most appropriate to the situation you're talking about. And some standards will seem more persuasive than others. Let's watch in this next negotiation how the standards can be used on both sides to narrow the difference and the differences between the parties. In this situation, I'm coaching a consultant and their client in a negotiation about the consultant's fees.
Tom, we've been holding down fees now for 4 years. You know we've been working with you every time you've run into a difficulty. The time has come and we need to pay back. This year we need a 13% increase.
That's outrageous. It's too much. We were thinking 4% walking in here. Maybe it's time we need to talk to the competition.
It's already tense. And the reason is, all they've put out on the table is a position, a number. They haven't even begun to explain where that number might have come from. What's the rationale, the legitimacy that lies behind it? Chuck, maybe it would help if you explain where that 13% came from.
All right? Tom, if you raised your fees to us by 13%, they would equal the average fee we get from our clients across the country.
And Tom, what about you? Where did that 4% figure come from? You seem pretty strong on that.
You know, we've just gone through a long negotiating process with unions and the whole 9 yards on salaries, and we've come with an across-the-board 4% increase.
I must say, our internal increases look like 10 to 11% for management.
Look at that. As soon as they get out a single rationale from one side or the other, they can begin to discuss, well, is that the most appropriate standard for this situation? And then they can begin to have a dialogue. Let's keep going.
Is 4% for your managers as well?
No, no upper-level management. 8.5%.
Yeah, how about your lawyers? What do you pay your lawyers?
Well, we pay them by the hour, $2.25 an hour. But 13% is too high, Chuck. This is St. Louis.
Well, you're right, it is St. Louis. But Tom, even in St. Louis, I mean, you'd have to raise your rates to us by, or I'm sorry, your fees to us by at least 9% if you were going to pay us the average we get for clients in St. Louis.
Well, what does 9% mean in terms of your hourly salaries across the board? Average it out.
Well, first of all, you've got to break out expenses. We haven't done it in the past, but take expenses out. And if you combine the highest hourly rate and the lowest hourly rate, you know, we've got a team working with you in various assignments, it would be about $125 an hour.
And you said that's the lowest hourly rate of anyone in your St. Louis office?
That's correct. Average.
Who do you have to sell this fee to?
My board.
Would it help if you could say that? That's the lowest hourly rate any client is getting in the St. Louis area?
Yeah, I think it's important for us all to feel that we're being given the best rate in town. I mean, after all, we've got to be one of your largest clients, certainly here.
That's a lot less than what you're paying your lawyers, too.
Yes, it is. Lawyers offer specialized services. Well, maybe I can live with that. It sounds as if I could sell it if you can provide me with something I can take to the board to convince them that indeed this is the lowest.
I can go back to the office and verify that, but I'm confident that that would be equal to the lowest average rate paid by any St. Louis client, and I can provide you with a memo, for instance, you can give to your board.
Yeah.
What about you, Chuck? You said that'd be a 9% increase. Could you live with something like that?
Well, it's not as much as I had hoped for.
You're going to have to talk to your other partners, presumably.
Right. However, I think it's probably going to be the largest increase of any client in our office. And if that's right, it ought to satisfy my partners. So
here, by looking at the rationales, standards that lie behind the positions, the ideas, the options that the parties have been discussing, you not only get some new options on the table, you narrow the gap between their differences. And note, in the solution that they've come up with so far, they haven't even had to agree on any single standard. One side is going to portray it to their constituency as the lowest hourly rate available to any client in the geographic area, while the other portrays it to his partners as the highest increase anyone has come into the office and gotten from their clients. So both should be happy, both should be able to live with it. That's the difference. Think where they started. 13%, 4%, bare numbers on the table. By looking to standards, rationales, legitimacy, and talking about which standards are more appropriate, they've found an option they can both live with. As you've just seen, one of the most powerful uses of independent standards is to help the other side persuade their constituents. And of course, they may help you persuade your constituents as well. When interests conflict and you can't find a creative option that satisfies both sides, be prepared to use independent standards to persuade both parties that an agreement is one that treats them fairly. Interests, options, and standards are a great way to deal with the substantive issues in negotiation. But negotiators are people first. Dealing with the people issues in negotiation is the subject of our next segment.
Segment 4, People.
Constantly in a negotiation, you're trying to focus on the problem, you're trying to look at the interests or the options or the standards, and the people get in the way. Their emotions, their egos, their different ways of seeing things, their communication patterns. Constantly, you're focusing on the problem, the people get in the way. People make two assumptions. Either they assume that, look, I've got to be soft on the people. I need this relationship. And that means being soft on the problem, giving in, making concessions. Or they make the opposite assumption. I've got to be hard on the problem. I need to get this. I need to get this for my organization or for myself. If that means being hard on the people, well, that's real life. We're in the world of business. We're not holding hands. What we find successful negotiators doing is rejecting both those assumptions. What they do is they separate the people from the problem, almost like drawing a line in their heads between the person and the problem, in order then to simultaneously be soft on the people, hard on the problem. In fact, the harder you need to be on the problem, the softer you need to be on the person if the person is not going to get in the way of dealing with the problem.
First part about emotions, I think, is to be aware of your own, be sensitive to where they are, feel them, and then be sensitive to the emotions of the other party. Try to acknowledge them, see if you can't understand how they're feeling. We sometimes think we're taught as children it's naughty to be angry. There's nothing wrong with feeling anger. It's like feeling hot or feeling cold. It's a feeling. How you deal with anger is something else.
People have a tendency to believe that when they disagree about something in negotiation, one side has to be right or the other side, and somebody has to be wrong. Usually that's not true. If people feel strongly about an issue, it's much more likely that they have facts you don't have, that they see the situation in a different way, which is perhaps partially valid, perhaps even as valid as the way that you see it. Before you get into a heated argument back and forth about who's right, it's better to say, how do they see it? Is there some piece of what they see that if I knew would make a difference to me?
So what I've heard are there emotion problems as people problems. There are problems of perception, the fact that people see things differently.
Right.
And the third category is communication problems.
Most people think of communication as my telling you. We think of the communication industry as broadcasting. Great communicators are people who talk and tell people things. I would say if communication is the problem, half of the problem is listening. In fact, the more important half is listening. Because unless I hear you, unless I understand where your head is, what you're thinking and feeling, I'm shooting it in the dark. I don't know what. So listen, active listening.
Listening, acknowledging your feelings, acknowledging the other side's feelings, putting yourself in the other side's shoes, none of them involve making a concession to the other side. We deal with, the key point is to deal with people problems with people techniques and then deal with the problem on its merits.
In the next negotiation, John Nathan is being asked for a raise by a talented young associate of his. John wants to avoid the raise. In fact, he wants to avoid discussing the problem by threatening the relationship, by indicating the relationship is at stake. He is deliberately, although maybe not consciously, mixing up the relationship with the substance. And Tim, asking for the raise, is fairly good in saying that the amount of the raise should not depend on the quality of the relationship. Let's watch.
I've been here for 18 months. I've been working really hard. I came to this firm because I value your advice and what you've taught me so much. And I think that now I'm looking around, I'm seeing other people in the firm coming in, hiring laterally at higher salaries than I'm getting. I'm wondering perhaps, is there a reason for this? If there's a reason that I'm not being paid comparably to other people in my position.
Oh, I hear what you're saying. You know that we're flying still a little low to the ground. We're trying to take this thing up to the 40,000 feet we think we ought to be flying at. You're doing a lot to help us get there. But you and I, we haven't talked money much. You knew coming in that we didn't have a lot of money to spend except on the projects and on the stuff that we're doing that are making us feel like we're contributing to something, making a difference out there. Money brought up between us at this time just seems inappropriate somehow. I'm uncomfortable about it.
In what way? I'm sorry. Is there...
I began by saying I'm proud of you, and I did feel corny about it. I mean, I do feel like your uncle or your dad. I mean, I brought you along. I think you'd say that you've learned quite a bit from me.
Absolutely. If I in any way implied that the relationship was not important to me or was not the most valuable thing, I am sorry about that. It is. I've learned so much from you, and it's something that no matter where I work or whatever I do, what I learned from you is going to be so important to me. But I think we need to separate that somehow our working relationship and the work I do for this firm needs to be looked at separately. And my salary requests are really for what I think I can contribute to the work of this firm.
Okay, so you just want to talk money, basically.
Yes, money in terms of what I can do for the company, what I can contribute.
No, I understand. I mean, I talk money with people all day long. You've heard me talk money. Half of the business is talking money. That's the part of the business that I like least. The part of the business I like most is what we do together. Fine. We're going to become merchants, basically, for the next 10 minutes and have a conversation about dollars and cents. Is that what you're asking me to do?
I don't know if I would use the word merchants in the sense that...
Well, it's a haggle, basically. It's a haggle. You could be a fishmonger, I could be a housewife.
I even haggle. I don't like the word haggle that much either. I think what I would like to do is to say, yes, I am very committed to this company. I would like to see on a work-based relationship something that is comparable salary-wise. And I don't want to bring in our relationship and the reasons I came to this firm, what I've learned from you, as combine this. I'd like to keep them separate.
Okay, how much do you want?
Well, I look at the other people you've brought in recently who are in my position, who are laterally hired, who are about $40,000, and that's the reason I think it's fair for the work I do.
You're being paid $32,000 now, Tim.
Yep.
$32,500.
Mm-hmm.
And you're asking for a $7,500 raise now.
Right.
I need to hear one thing clearly from you. Are we in ultimatum mode here? Are you saying, pay me the $40,000, give me the $7,500 raise today, or I'm gone, I'm out of here, I'm up the next step on the ladder? Is that where we are?
Absolutely not, John. I would never leave you today. I would never walk out on you. That is something that I just would not do, and purely because we value our friendship so much, I would never do anything like that to you. All I want is to be treated fairly. All I ask is that I be treated for my work the same way anyone else in your firm is treated.
Tim was good there. It's amazing. Every time John would bring something up, he'd reaffirm to John how much the relationship meant, and then say, but how much I'm paid is just a question of what's fair in the office. I don't want to feel ripped off.
It's almost like when someone says, trust me.
That's right.
You should answer, of course I trust you. And common business practice would suggest that I run this by my lawyer.
Now let's watch a negotiation between a professional and a manager. The professional is concerned about her schedule. She doesn't think that she has enough time at home with her child. Here, perception plays a role. The manager has a very different view of the fairness of the professional's schedule. Let's watch.
Irma, I'm having trouble doing this job and taking care of my child. I came home last night after being on the road for 7 days, and my daughter didn't even know who I was. She wouldn't have anything to do with me, and I'm at my wit's end. This is so crazy. I feel like you have scheduled me week after week on the road. I feel like I've done my fair share. I do work really well, and I'm really going crazy. This is really difficult. I can't keep it up. With the quality of my work, as well as being a mother, which I never get a chance to do because you always have me on the road, it's been really difficult. I think you can understand this, Irma. You're a mother. You understand what it's like. It's been really, really difficult for me. Can you help me?
Well, I certainly understand as a mother what you must be feeling. If I came home and my child didn't recognize me, I'd be very upset. And I would like to help you. I want to help the company, too, so there may be some conflicting interest there. Let's talk more.
Well, isn't motherhood the most important thing in the world? I mean, the child's welfare?
I think that's very important, and this is a very critical time in your daughter's life. And that's a priority question, and I think that's one of the questions you and I need to talk about. Where are your priorities right now?
Well, I want to be a good mother, and I want to be a good employee of this company. I want to keep my work at the level that it's at, and I feel that if you put me on the road, as much as you do, I can't be good at anything other than my job.
Okay. So you're feeling like there's not enough balance in your life right now. Well, Francine, one of the reasons we put you on the road is you're one of our best employees, and we've got a lot of demand right now. And more than that, we're hearing, and I'm hearing from other folks, how come Francine isn't on the road as much as we are? And I said...
Who is saying that?
Well, let me tell you, I thought that was ridiculous, too. So I pulled together the data, and I looked at it, and I said, you know, actually, you are doing about 80% of what other people are doing. And that's been because I've been trying to the extent that I could to minimize the amount of time you have on the road.
80%?
About 80%, yeah. So they're right. In other words, they feel like you're getting a break that they're not getting. So when I'm standing in my shoes trying to understand what it means to be a mother, I'm also hearing this voice of 24 people over here saying, hey, is this fair? And I'm frankly facing the dilemma of saying, Francine, maybe you should do more, and you're now coming in saying, you got to give me less.
Yeah, you got to give me less.
Okay. I have several responsibilities. One is to keep you and those other 24 people happy, productive. But I also have to make this company work, and I have to make sure our clients are happy. This is our busiest season. There's no way at this point I can reduce the workload. I think we can talk...
Wow.
Well, yeah, I know that's, especially after what happened to you last night. I'm sure this is not good news. I can't reduce it right now, but maybe we could talk about some options long term that could give you some relief in the future.
So you're willing to work with me on this?
I'm willing to talk about it and to see what's possible, because I don't want to lose you. If there's a way to keep you, treat others fairly, and keep our revenue stream where it needs to be, I'm willing to work with you.
Bill, what did you think of Irma's performance there? What did you see?
I thought Irma did a beautiful job of separating the people from the problem, being soft on the person while remaining hard on the problem, keeping the company's interests in mind.
No, she's certainly able to be firm and friendly at the same time.
It really makes a difference when you can do that.
It's not just the words, it's the tone, it's the spirit, it's the intent that lie behind the words.
Well, all of these techniques are more than just, words or formulas that you memorize. They don't work as formulas. You really have to mean it. And that's why dealing with people is hard. You have to make this part of you and really make it work. But if you can, it'll make a big difference.
In every negotiation, there are people problems. When these loom large, when they become important, you want to get the first basic point. Disentangle the people issues from the substantive ones of price, terms, conditions, whatever you have. Just take them apart. Deal with the substance on its merits. But don't try and buy the relationship. Don't give in on the substance in order to improve their personal relationship. Deal with the substance, disentangle it, and then turn to the people problems.
Deal with the people problems using people techniques. Acknowledge your emotions and theirs without blaming one side or the other. Listen actively. Put yourself in their shoes and understand how they see it. Those are the techniques that allow you to make them feel respected and well treated.
Above all, turn a face-to-face confrontation into side-by-side problem solving. So you're both sitting on the same side of the table facing the problem. You're attacking the problem jointly, not the people.
Segment 5, Alternatives.
In every negotiation, there's a dilemma. Shall I risk the mistake of walking away without agreement, or risk the mistake of signing an agreement I wish I hadn't signed, regretting it? Every negotiator feels uncertain. Is this deal good enough? Should I walk? Should I not? If I walk, I may get to the door, look out, and discover it's awful. If I stay at the table, I may sign an agreement when there was a better deal around the corner. The answer to this dilemma, the solution again, is preparation. Before you sit down at the table, know what you will do if you walk away. What is your best self-help alternative? We call this your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And I want to have that in my pocket. I want to know just what I'm going to do. That is the measure of the success of any negotiation. Unless it's better